Hello, I'm Richard Walker, and I guide a small group Jack the Ripper walk. Small group, so you won't be trailing behind 30 or 40 other people. The maximum number will be 12. And to make sure you hear every word, I use a microphone and radio transmitter, and you get a receiver and earpiece. So wherever you choose to stand, and no matter what is going on around us, you'll have me in your ear. If you decide to take a Jack the Ripper site tour, you'll find that you can start at Tower Hill, Aldgate, or Aldgate East, depending on which of the Jack the Ripper tours you decide to join. For 15 years, I started at Tower Hill. But during lockdown, with the time and space to reread and rethink, I decided that Whitechapel Station was a much better place to begin the Jack the Ripper story. The murder of Polly Nichols, believed to be the first of 5 women killed by Jack the Ripper, took place right behind Whitechapel Station. The inquest into Polly's murder took place right next to Whitechapel Station. The inquest into the murder of the second of the 5 victims also took place there. At the time of the Whitechapel murders, the Whitechapel district didn't have a coroner's court, and an inquest would often be held in a convenient pub. Coroner Wynne Baxter decided that the Working Lads Institute was a more appropriate venue, and members of the press agreed. A word may be said as to the great advantage there is in selecting such a place as the Lads Institute for the coroner's inquiries. The hall is lofty and light, and there is plenty of room for everyone. The improvement upon the custom of hiring a public house room is manifest, and the new departure inaugurated by Mr. Wynne Baxter cannot be regretted. Many of the people featured in my Jack the Ripper tour entered the Working Lads Institute. The inquest into Polly Nichols, the 43-year-old homeless woman believed to be the first of Jack the Ripper's victims, was held at the Working Lads Institute. Witnesses included Polly Nichols' father, Edward Walker, Police Constable John Neal, the police officer who discovered Polly's body, Dr. Llewellyn, who examined her body at the scene of the crime, and who later carried out the post-mortem examination, and Charles Allen Lechmere, the witness featured in my earlier posts. The inquest into Annie Chapman, the 47-year-old homeless woman believed to be the second victim of Jack the Ripper, was also held there. Among the witnesses in that case were Divisional Police Surgeon Dr. George Bagster Phillips and eyewitnesses John Richardson and Elizabeth Long, all of whom feature in my previous blog. They and many others connected to the case entered the Working Lads Institute to give evidence. Other inquests of victims of the Whitechapel murders also took place in the Working Lads Institute. Martha Tabron, a 39-year-old homeless woman who was murdered on August 7th, 1888, and Alice Mackenzie, who was murdered on July 7th, 1889, and Frances Cole, who was murdered on the 13th of February, 1891. All of these murders remain unsolved, and some believe that the unknown serial killer that we call Jack the Ripper was responsible for more than just 5 murders. Some believe he killed Martha Tabron, Alice Mackenzie, and Frances Cole, as well as Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman, Liz Stride, Kate Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. Who committed these crimes remains a mystery. Who his victims were is not a mystery. They were all women who were struggling in a world that showed little concern for their safety. The Working Lads Institute is one of the few buildings left to us that has a direct connection to these terrible crimes. You can see it when you join me on my Jack the Ripper walk. It stands as a reminder of the brutal murders of the women murdered in Whitechapel. Building work began on the Working Lads Institute in 1884, and the extension at the rear of the building was completed in 1887, in time for Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee, and just 1 year before the Whitechapel murders began. The tall, gabled front would have risen impressively above anything else in Whitechapel Road then. In a book written about the Methodist minister Thomas Jackson, William Potter described it as the loftiest building in the East End. A banking crisis in 1891 put the project in jeopardy until the Reverend Thomas Jackson came up with £8,000 to save it, to supply a counter-attraction to the low music halls and other East End resorts for the young, which are so fatal to their social and moral well-being. Reverend Jackson continued his good work in Whitechapel until he died in 1932. In 1997, the upper floors were converted into 9 flats. Well, thank you for checking out this post. I hope I'll get to meet you on one of my Jack the Ripper walks through Whitechapel, when you can check out this historic building.